Well, first up, it's mayhem in Maldives. A day after President Abdullah Yameen declared a state of emergency in the country, he remains defiant. Addressing the nation today, Yameen said the emergency decree is to investigate the plot of a coup from the Supreme Court ruling. A shock ruling from the court last week ordering the release of top opposition politicians has triggered a furious response from Yameen. He said the Supreme Court shouldn't be subject to pressure from other state powers and that the president should have full authority, including that over the judiciary. Later in the evening, the Maldives government issued a lengthy statement slamming the Supreme Court order, saying, and I quote, "The Supreme Court attempted to subvert the government and hold hostage the work of the government by obstructing the work of the executive in carrying out its constitutional mandates and legal duties and perverted the course of justice. The president was forced to declare a state of emergency to ensure the smooth running of the state as is mandated to him, and after exhausting all venues available to him legally and protocol-wise to ease out the situation." Hours after declaring a state of emergency for 15 days, Yameen sent soldiers to storm the court and arrest judges, including Chief Justice Abdullah Saeed. The arrested judges were sent to a detention center outside Malé. Maldives police also detained Yameen's estranged half-brother and former president Mamoun Abdul Gayoom, who had sided with the main opposition. Tension has gripped the capital Malé as opposition activists hit the streets protesting against the imposition of emergency. The United Nations and several countries have urged the Maldives government to respect the court order. All eyes are on Yameen's predecessor, Mohamed Nasheed now, who remains in exile in Sri Lanka's capital, Colombo. Mohamed Nasheed urged India to send its envoy, backed by military, to secure the release of all political detainees and judges. He also asked the US to stop all financial transactions of Maldives regime leaders going through US banks. Earlier today, Nasheed tweeted to say, and I quote, "On behalf of Maldivian people, we humbly request India to send envoy backed by its military to release judges and political detainees, including former President Gayoom. We request a physical presence and the US to stop all financial transactions of Maldives regime leaders going through US banks," unquote. The Indian government has now issued a statement on the situation in Maldives, saying, and I quote, "We are disturbed by the declaration of a state of emergency in the Maldives following the refusal of the government to abide by the unanimous ruling of the full bench of the Supreme Court and also by the suspension of constitutional rights of the people of Maldives. The arrest of the Supreme Court Chief Justice and political figures are also reasons for concern," unquote. And well, to discuss more on the issue, joining us on our show today is retired Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, who is the former DGMO. And also joining us on the show is Mr. Muhammad Aslam, who has been an MP as well as a cabinet minister in Malé in Maldives. Thank you both for joining us today on our show. I'll come to you first, Mr. Aslam. As far as the situation in Maldives goes today, the president is still extremely adamant, saying that he's well within his rights to impose the emergency and that he has complete control over the judiciary, the executive. What really is the situation there? If you can just break it down to us. We understand that arrests have been made, judges have been put behind bars, opposition leaders have been put behind bars, the former president is in jail as well. What really is the situation there now, and what are the expectations from other countries, including India, at the moment?
Well, as you know, this is a presidential democracy where the separation of powers are very clearly stated. We have the executive, the head of which is the president. The judiciary is there, and the parliament is there. The two bodies of the state, the judiciary and the parliament, are not functioning at the moment. So it's only the government that's the only institution of the state that is functioning now. In a presidential democracy, it is utmost important that these three powers are able to operate independently. Checks and balances are ensured through that system. And now today, the president has taken over the judiciary. He has forcefully entered the highest court in the country, arrested the chief justice and another judge of the court. and he has stopped Parliament from functioning. 2 days before Parliament was supposed to start the session, this year's sessions, and by citing that there is security issues, that they have not started those sessions, and the military and the police are following his orders. Effectively, this country has become a military state.
Right, and now former President Nasheed has looked at India, said that India should intervene in the matter. If you can throw more light on what exactly are the expectations from India here. India has so far released a statement saying that it finds the situation in Maldives extremely disturbing, a matter of grave concern. But as far as Maldives goes, opposition leaders like you go, you have been a cabinet minister in the Nasheed government as well. What really are the expectations from India?
There are politicians like the current president in the Maldives who understands that international community works on a certain pace, and then he has a term of 5 years and he thinks he can ride the wave, and that's exactly what he is doing. And if India and other countries are slow in doing things, he will definitely ride the wave. 21st century diplomacy don't seem to be working here in the Maldives. This man needs to be clearly told with no uncertain terms that this cannot be tolerated. And India being, the biggest neighbor in the region and the largest democracy in the world, India must do everything it can to make sure that there is a functioning democracy in the Maldives. In the long run, when the Maldives becomes a failed state, it will affect the whole region. It's not just going to be affecting the Maldives. It's also going to affect Sri Lanka, India, and the rest of the countries in the region. Therefore, India must send out a clear message, a clear signal to the Maldives. And former President Nasheed has said that India must send an envoy who's backed by the military. I think that is very clear. That means that there has to be someone who can actually exert a force on the current regime, and then tell them, look, such things cannot be tolerated in your neighborhood in 21st century. This is completely unacceptable.
Right, Mr. Mohammed Aslam, stay with us. We'll come back to you in just a bit. Let's bring in Mr. Vinod Bhatia at this juncture. Mr. Bhatia, you heard Mr. Aslam. He said that 21st century diplomacy seems to be not working with President Yameen. And as former President Nasheed has urged India through his statement that he wants an envoy backed by the military. As far as India goes, looking at the development so far, the statement that India has given out just a few minutes back, what does seem to be India's stand at the moment?
You see, the situation, as we all know, is very sensitive. It's a grave concern to India. It's a direct concern to India. We want a stable region. We are a regional power out here. We are a net security provider in the region. It is in India's interest and the interest of the world to ensure a stable Maldives, because Maldives is geostrategically very important. It lies at the mouth of the 1.5-degree channel. Presently, India is just watching and waiting and what's happening out there. And that is not a bad one, because we have to see what actually goes on. It's been only 24 hours since the emergency has been declared. So we really got to see how it takes shape. But let me also say that diplomacy is a good option, and coercive diplomacy, if need be, should be done, and we should ensure that there is a stable Maldives. Stability in the region is very important. Maldives is a direct area of interest to us. It's an area of influence to us, and we cannot let anything go wrong out there.
Right. Stay with us, Mr. Bhatia, and Mr. Aslam. We'll come back to you in just a bit. The nation of 1,000 islands is currently battling 1,000 problems and more, maybe. Mayhem, bloodshed and a ruthless dictatorship are now threatening the peaceful people of the Maldives. The Maldivians have been making fervent appeals to India and India alone to come to their rescue. India has been guarded so far. The appeals are now expanding to address other countries too. Does India have to act and act now? Well, senior foreign editor Padma Rao holds that view and tells you why.
At the root of the Maldives' worst crisis is its current president, Abdullah Yameen. And it can be said with certainty that no individual, no matter in how powerful an office, could hold his entire country at ransom unless he has the backing and the support of someone or something very powerful. Media across the world have reported in depth about Mr. Yameen's two closest allies, the Wahhabi Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the People's Republic of China. The Maldivian opposition has united like never before. Former foes have joined hands to save their country from spiraling out of control and joining the ranks of nations that are viewed as rogue states under ruthless dictators such as North Korea. The country's first democratically elected president, Mohammad Nasheed, is in exile. For years, Mr. Nasheed has been appealing to big neighbour India to help. Even the judges of Maldives Supreme Court, who are at the heart of this crisis, have directed their urgent pleas to India, which has often come to the rescue of the Maldives in the past. But India is playing its usual cautious game of wait and watch. That's understandable. India bashing is a favourite pastime across South Asia. The big brother is not keen on now being abused as the big bully too. New Delhi is unlikely to go for unilateral military intervention. Perhaps sensing that, an appeal from the oppositional Maldivians was subtly reworded. A press statement released late in the night after troops stormed Male's Supreme Court, the Maldivian Democratic Party in exile issued a statement. It reads, and I quote, "President Nasheed continues to engage with concerned international partners, including India and other neighbouring countries, seeking resolution to the ongoing crisis and urges India to act swiftly." So who are the other neighbouring countries, that is those who share a South Asian cousinhood with the Maldives? And who are the concerned international partners from outside the South Asia region that the statement refers to? China, the United States and the European Union have all expressed concern at the events. But while the US and the EU have demanded that Mr. Yameen respect his Supreme Court and uphold democracy, China has merely issued a travel advisory to its citizens. India and Sri Lanka have reacted along the same lines as the Western nations. Till the time of airing this report, Pakistan has remained silent. The Maldives is part of China's multi-billion-dollar One Belt, One Road initiative. But the project is under fire in the many nations it touches across the Indian Ocean all the way up to Africa. Uppermost on China's mind will be protection of its investments and assets in the Maldives. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, has a new ruler, Prince Salman. Observers say that Riyadh is no longer as close to President Yameen as earlier. Now, what about Pakistan? The biggest Muslim nation in the SAARC community, the community of South Asian nations, has the second largest global population of Muslims. President Yameen and ousted Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif met in 2017 and signed several bilateral agreements. Pakistan and President Yameen share a mutual friend too, that is China. So why has Pakistan not said a word about the standoff so far? What's brewing? Pakistan's international image is down and out. Being seen as the author of a diplomatic grand gesture, even if a compromise with President Yameen will give the country with the reputation of being a nursery for terrorists a tremendous boost. China cannot intervene directly in the Maldives without incurring even more mistrust than it already has through its controversial debt for development policies in the Indian Ocean. But it can certainly use the South Asian genetics of its close ally Pakistan as the front face of any initiative. New Delhi must act, and act fast. To avoid the label of big bully, India too can proceed in an international collective effort. On the Maldives, the United States and India, for instance, are on the same page. As part of the newly formed Quad, they can now share a major diplomatic success in averting a major crisis in the Indian Ocean region. Padma Rao, WION.
Well, coming back to you now, Mr. Bhatia, as our senior editor Padma Rao went on to state in her report, the closeness that China has enjoyed with Maldives since 2011 that has rapidly become more and more close, and India has been equally distant as far as the Yameen government goes when it comes to Maldives and its relations with it. So is this the opportunity that India should seize, if not anything else, to build back that bridge with Maldives? Can India really do that with any sort of intervention, or will there only be more mistrust if India intervenes in a military way as being suggested by the president in exile?
India firstly doesn't intervene in a military way anywhere without the request of the government, whether it was Maldives in 1988 or Sri Lanka before that or disaster relief. It is at the express request of the government that India has intervened, and if there are requests from the government in Maldives or other parties in Maldives, yes, India could form with like-minded countries. The US is there. The UN has expressed concerns through the UN Charter. Yes, India will have to ensure stability in the Maldives. That is the bottom line. And everything we should not see as a zero-sum game with China. India has got its own interests, China has got its own interests, though this is in a direct area of influence, so we have to see that our interests are actually safeguarded out there. And Pakistan is the key player in this, because Pakistan and Maldives have been close of late, but we also understand that most of the Maldivian National Defense Forces have also been trained in India, and we carry out joint training with them, joint exercise with them, so there's a mutual respect out there. Even the people of Maldives, we have to invest in the people of Maldives, and the people of Maldives will be with India. Another major factor which you need to consider is the tourism industry. In this 15-day emergency period, the tourism industry is going to get hit. Tourism industry is the major industry for Maldives. It's about $2.7 billion in a year. And if the tourism industry does not revive, then Maldives have internal turmoil. I remember in 1988 also, when we rescued President Gayoom and restored his government, the first thing, that was on the 4th of November, the first thing he said, do not let tourism get hit. And on the 5th of November, exactly within 24 hours, we had the first tourist, the aircraft coming in, flying in, and tourism had restarted. So Maldives have to take care of the industry which it has nurtured for many years. And India has to help out. India has to be a key player out here. India has to take the lead to restore democracy in Maldives, to restore the stability in Maldives, whether it's with US, whether it's with UN Charter, whether it's alone, whether the diplomatic means have to be used, whether it's some sort of military coalition has to be done. But India has to ensure stability in Maldives.
Right, you did mention as to how military action is not a possibility unless it's an invitation from the incumbent government. So what are really the options before India at the moment, considering that the relation with Yameen is not as warm one might have wanted India to have?
The situation out there is unstable out there right now. The people, I think the people of Maldives would be for stability out there. And with the President Yameen having taken over the role of the executive, having taken over the role of the judiciary, whether he can control the people out there and for how long, that has to be seen. Like I said, if the situation does not improve, stability doesn't come in, the tourism industry is going to get a very hard hit. And that the people cannot allow, because the livelihood of the people is depending on the tourism out there. And that industry has to get back on its feet as early as possible. So there may be alternate powers, power structures already existing outside Maldives, but within Maldives also, which may come into play and may request India to intervene and restore stability.
Right. Now, Mohammed Aslam, as I will bring you back into the discussion at the moment. As far as the situation in Maldives goes, you have your president being extremely adamant about his stand. A 15-day emergency is going on at the moment. You have looked at India, but slowly, like the president in exile, Nasheed has put out, other alternatives are also being explored. US is being reached out to, other countries are being reached out to. So as far as aid goes, as far as assistance goes, intervention goes, what sort of global intervention are you really looking at here?
Well, we're not saying that somebody come and bombs this man. It's not what we're asking for. But this is 21st century. There are a number of ways that can be used for one country. It's a global community. One country to really make another country to do the right thing if they have deviated from the right path, and certainly India is in a position to do that. As I said earlier, President Yameen knows that there's an election just around the corner. If he can suppress everything and if he can steal the election in 2018, suppress the democratic movement here, suppress the rule of law and the courts and the parliament. And if he can still, steal the election, he becomes the president. We have seen in the past and in many countries, dictators have, won elections, won in inverted commas, and every time they have done it, it seems to be a new start. And that's exactly what the man thinks that he will be doing. And before that, India must, and we look upon India to be responsible, to do something about it and something concrete about it. And I think the whole world looks at India to play that role. And there's no other country in the region who should be doing that. Pakistan is irrelevant to us. We've never had ties with Pakistan, especially for matters on democracy. We have had close ties with Sri Lanka. But India is the country to which we look upon to sort this matter out. And we certainly hope that it happens quickly, it happens soon. Maldivians are usually peace-loving people. So you would not see Maldivians out on the street battling with the police as you would see in many other nations. You do not see same sort of violence that you normally see on news in other parts of the world. That simply doesn't mean that Maldivians don't have that rage and they don't want to do things. It's just in our nature that but that doesn't mean that we don't want this. We really want this, and we hope that this will be sorted within days rather than months.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed Aslam, as well as Mr. Vinod Bhatia, for joining us in our studios today and sharing your expertise with us. Well, moving on to some other news now. The United States has condemned it, and so has Australia. The United Nations has expressed concern, and so have Canada and even India. The world is watching the Maldives and want President Yameen to respect the Supreme Court verdict, release the 9 MPs arrested on reportedly trumped-up charges, and practically pave the way for the return of the single largest oppositional Maldivian Democratic Party, whose leaders are in exile. After the Supreme Court verdict, President Yameen made his moves, at first rapidly. Well, 2 legislators who had been out of the country as events unfolded were arrested at the airport as soon as they arrived, but some hours later they were released. Then there was a dramatic escalation. Websites were pulled down, journalists threatened, the judges of the Supreme Court, including its Chief Justice, reportedly received death threats. The judges spent the night inside the Supreme Court, and as predicted, troops loyal to President Yameen marched into the building at night. Once again, 2 of them were arrested. Later in the same night, the situation grew even more dramatic. Police and troops surrounded the residence of former President Mamoun Gayoom. In the presence of his daughter and other family members, the frail 80-year-old, who is said to be undergoing periodic treatment in the Indian city of Bengaluru, was taken into custody on vague charges of bribery. Gayoom is the current President Yameen's half-brother, but associates of Yameen have disclosed that there is no love lost between the 2 men. The story gets even stranger. Just hours after that midnight drama, there was a release, that of Faris Mamoun. There are 2 aspects to this release, and they have set a cat among the pigeons in the Maldives. Faris Mamoun is one of the 9 legislators the Supreme Court's verdict has ordered the release of. Faris Mamoun was in jail on charges of reported corruption, but Mamoun just happens to be former President Mamoun Gayoom's eldest son. So was there a trade-off? Something along the lines of take me into custody but release my son. Well, President Gayoom's fellow legislators in the joint opposition dismissed the idea. There is such unity in that joint oppositional front to topple Mr. Yameen that they do not believe President Gayoom would have acted selfishly to have only his son released. But then why are there some releases and some arrests? Everything that President Yameen has done in reaction to the verdict up to now has been far from constitutional. So why didn't he just go the whole hog and arrest everyone opposed to him? Why only some presidential spokesman could not explain that finer point to WION either?
There are ongoing investigations into corruption, into bribery, and to comment on details, I think the investigative authorities will be able to comment on details. But as far as the arrests and release go, the investigations are ongoing. So inquiries will be made, and arrests will be made. Investigations will continue.
Well, what is President Yameen up to now? Is he trying to fracture the united opposition through the move to arrest a father but release his son? His support for President Yameen, wherever that may be from, dwindling even as pressure from the international community piles up. For now, the Maldives president may not give two hoots about what the world thinks of him, but he will most certainly want both the police and the armed forces on his side, and that, given the reported fissures within those organizations, may not be a privilege he enjoys for much longer. Well, India has been the largest troop contributor to United Nations missions since its inception. So far, India has taken part in 43 peacekeeping missions, and WION is on ground zero exploring what it takes for the Indian Army personnel to serve on foreign land. WION is the only channel covering the Indian peacekeeping troops in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And now for our special report from Congo, WION's Kartikeya Sharma joined a UN peacekeeping mission as it flew over dense jungles and lava fields to its forward bases. Take a look.
So now I'm going to tell you something which is very interesting. Now what you see is not soil, this is lava. This volcano erupted 12 years back. Vegetation has come up, but all what you see is the volcanic soil. And the volcano which erupted from there, the right in front of you. So Congo is full of active volcanoes, and this is one part of its geography. The whole town of Goma got obliterated, and it got obliterated because this lava is very fast moving, and this lava actually acquired a speed of 60 kilometers per hour, traveled for more than 70 kilometers, and destroyed hectares and hectares of land. And this lava came from Noribong volcano, and now this volcano is expected to be active again any time this year. So it is past that day, but the fact of the matter is, it goes on to show how inhospitable this terrain has become and how inhospitable the terrain of Congo is. It is remote, it's unconnected with road, and most important of all, it makes the job tough for the United Nations peacekeeping forces. Camera person Manish Srivastava, Kartikeya Sharma, Congo, WION.
And while Kartikeya Sharma also joined a UN peacekeeping force as it travelled to forward bases in Congo, he spoke to Major Pranay Kale during the chopper ride and asked him about the mission and its challenges.
So I am on my way to Yameen. Yameen in Congo, as you can see, the helicopter is taking a turn towards its left, and I am joined by Major Pranay Kale, who is part of the United Nations peacekeeping force. Pranay, how challenging, adventurous and difficult is the task of peacekeeper in Congo?
It is a very challenging and difficult task per se, but the training that we get in our own army back in our country land, the experiences that we have makes it very easy for the Indian peacekeepers to operate and work in Congo under the United Nations. Of course, it has its own challenges of cultural differences, language barriers, the change in dynamics, the situation, and the political turmoil, the frequency with which situation changes over here. But we are one of the best forces under the United Nations missions, which is doing a very, very good job, a remarkable job that we are doing, and which is also widely recognized by the locals over here as well.
Pranay, one thing I would like to ask you, how do you balance between the locals and the Congolese army? Because when it comes to Congolese army, they are not very professional, and locals have their own expectations from UN. So how do you balance those counter aspirations, training the army and maintaining the interests of the local community?
Well, it is a very challenging task per se, because as per the UN mandate, we are supposed to be helping the local army, the Congolese army, with their training. We are also supposed to help them with a bit of operations per se, but if we help them openly, then we also might be creating dissent among the local people. There might be armed groups which think that we are against them, helping the local army. But then we have to strike a very fine balance wherein we have to respect the sentiments of the people, take care of the sentiments, and at the same time help the Congolese army raise their standards so that they can take care of their own country themselves.
But the bottom line here is, look at the remoteness of this area. Pranay, when you operate here, when you come here, how does your experience of the world, how does your experience as Indian military come handy in Congo?
In fact, this question has been asked by a lot of other nationals who are here under the UN flag with us, and I always tell them that the experiences that we have in our country land, be it Kashmir, be it the north or the northeast comes in very handy because we've handled situations like this. We handle locals like this. The welfare measures that we do, the kind of operation that we're doing, the kind of recce mission that we're doing even now are similar to what we've done back in our country land. So we are amongst the most experienced people to be here in Congo under the United Nations.
So, life is full of challenges, and Major Pranay Kala is one of the faces of Indian military. He, like many others, symbolizes the exemplary vigor, professionalism, and patriotism of Indian men, on men and olive with blue caps. The camera person Manish Sharma from Congo for WION.